2024 Mercedes-AMG SL 43 First Drive Review. 4's not enough. We took to the track for a brief stint behind the wheel of the new SL 43 to find out if a 4-cylinder SL really cuts the mustard. You can now buy a Mercedes SL class that has as many seats as its engine has cylinders. Never before in the 69-year history of the Mercedes SL has that been the case, but it is now. For the first time since the original 190 SL, you can get a 4-cylinder under the hood. That original car didn't have 4 seats, though, and it was an incredible, lightweight machine that was developed for racing first and road use second. Officially dubbed the Mercedes-AMG SL 43, this is a wholly AMG-developed SL with 2+2 seating, a chassis shared with the upcoming AMG GT rear-wheel drive and a 2.0-liter 4-cylinder engine up front delivering 375 horsepower and 354 lb-ft of torque with a little hybrid assistance. At the southern tip of Africa, around the famed Kyalami Grand Prix circuit, I got my first few laps behind the wheel of the SL 43, which was enough for me to realize the world doesn't need a 4-cylinder SL. The good, supermodel looks. The new Mercedes-AMG SL is a looker. Mercedes got the proportions right on this one, despite somehow shoving in an extra pair of seats. And on looks alone, you would never imagine anything other than a V8 under the hood. It also feels lovely, the interior is much better than I thought it would be, and even the massive infotainment screen in the center doesn't look out of place. Bear in mind that on a racetrack, the last thing I was fiddling with was the touch screen. Still, the seats drop low into the chassis, and on a cold southern hemisphere winter afternoon, the heated seats work great. The steering wheel feels good in hand, too, and for someone 6'2" as I am, the seating position was spot on. Initial impressions: chassis, braking, steering. The 7th generation SL is a Mercedes-AMG developed model from the ground up, and its platform will underpin the new AMG GT sports car/supercar. This shows, as through high and low speed corners, the SL 43 remains planted and well composed. Under braking, there's no nosediving or unsettling of the rear, which suggests an inherent balance to the platform AMG is working with. The steering agrees, and the turn-in is tight with precise weighting, albeit not giving the most feedback. Still, with a 4-cylinder engine up front, one would expect keener turn-in than what you get from its larger 8-cylinder brethren. Braking performance also seemed decent, with strong feedback from the pedal and the ability to shed speed well and get the car perched nicely on the front axle. The fundamentals seem right, but one aspect let them down. The bad: an SL is no place for a 4-pot. I've never been one to slag off a car for having a 4-cylinder engine or even a 3-pot, but a Mercedes SL isn't just any car. It's the S-class of sports cars, a car that once wholly embodied Mercedes' racing ethos. And in something like that, a 4-cylinder doesn't work. The 2.0-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder has an electric turbocharger to mitigate lag and a 48-volt mild hybrid system for an extra dose of torque. Its on-paper figures of 375 HP and 354 lb-ft seem fine, too, and with peak power at 6,750 rpm and torque between 3,250 and 5,000 rpm, it seems like a car that'll be happy to rev out to reward the driver. But it feels limp. Perhaps the direct comparison to a 416 HP/369 lb-foot Mercedes-AMG A45S Hyperhatch ahead of me left me wanting, but for a car entirely developed by AMG to have weaker performance than a run-of-the-mill hatch tuned by the department is a big problem. It revs out fine, picks up speed decently, and the 9-speed automatic gearbox does a fair job of being in the right gear at the right time. But the engine feels flat, lacks character as it revs out, and because it doesn't have the DCT of the A45 and CLA45, it doesn't give off the same flatulent upshifts. More power and noise could be a remedy, giving it the engine tune from the facelifted A45S should have been a no-brainer, but I think this would be a band-aid on a bullet wound. When the AMG SL lineup is going to be headlined by an 800+ HP plug-in hybrid V8 with AWD, a 4-cylinder seems like a weak attempt to scrape up the remaining buyers who can no longer get a new Mercedes-AMG SL. Those aren't SL buyers, and cheapening the SL nameplate to cheapen the admission price, if 6 figures can be considered cheap, is a disservice to a product that otherwise impresses and leaves the door open for shoppers to find more cylinders and noise elsewhere. I'm sure it'll have more than enough power in a real-world scenario, but the Mercedes SL has never been described as enough or ample. The SL is meant to be superlative, a feast for the senses. At idle and low-speed trundling, the engine needs to hint that there's more to be unleashed, and on song, I expect to be assaulted by an acoustic symphony. The SL43 doesn't do that. Disclaimer: racetracks suck for first drives. This article may be labeled a first drive, but the truth is that I experienced the SL43 in a very limited environment, on the pristine tarmac of an FIA Grade 2 circuit where its suspension rides as smoothly in comfort as it does in Sport Plus. My time behind the wheel was limited to just a few laps, too, so these are very brief, very rudimentary impressions, most of which warrant further investigation on a week-long test drive, which will happen soon. Within the confines of a racetrack, you can't evaluate ride quality, and your mind is, or should be, so focused on the act of driving so much that you can't really look at interior details. A racetrack is a great place for manufacturers to launch a product and a terrible place for a first drive, as so much of the everyday experience isn't seen or felt on a track, and just being on a great track immediately puts any gearhead car tester in a better frame of mind than being behind a keyboard. Remember this the next time you see first drive impressions from a track-only launch. There's more to a car than its behavior in a conditions-controlled environment.